September 1931. Over the silent crowds gathered in London's Downing Street hung the shadow of the Depression. The pound sterling, symbol before the world of Britain's financial power, was sinking daily lower. In the throes of crisis, England's statesmen had little time for rumors of war on frontiers far across the world. September 1931, before the 72nd Congress of the United States, Herbert Hoover attempts to bridge the deepening gulf of unemployment. And across the face of America, the years of slump and dislocation take their tragic course. Small wonder that the democracies, wrestling with their own ills, could pay scant attention to the storm clouds gathering beyond the Pacific. Almost unnoticed amid domestic troubles was a new power rising in the Orient. Almost unnoticed were the diplomats with strange names. Yasuhito Chichibu, visiting the capitals of North America. Hideki Tojo, heading a military mission to Berlin. Yosuke Matsuoka, addressing the Council of the League of Nations, speaking in measured terms of a great future for East Asia, signing in the name of a far-off emperor a solemn undertaking to respect the boundaries of sovereign states. Kenkishi Yoshizawa, visiting the governor of the Dutch East Indies, pointing out with courtly suavity the advantages of a deal in crude oil with his neighbor to the north. For to Western eyes, Tokyo was still a spot upon the map, the far-off capital of a picturesque people, a people gracious in manner, serious in study, a people swift to adopt the new, yet slow to discard the rigid feudal order of the past, a people whose highest pride was their skill in the patient, innocent art of arranging flowers. But in September 1931, Japan completed her plans for the attack which was eventually to open one of the vastest and most terrible fronts of World War II. Without warning, the attack came at a place whose name aroused in millions only the memory of schoolroom geography, the city of Mukden, capital of the northeastern territory of China, known as Manchuria. Filled with a savage bloodlust, deliberately fostered through long months of secret training, the Japanese army swept through the city streets, butchering soldiers and civilians alike. To shattered Mukden came the son of heaven himself, Hirohito, source of radiant peace. He accepted the banzais of his chamberlains. He acknowledged the well-organized obeisance of his new puppet subjects. He rewarded with the divine gaze the efforts of his faithful generals. He blessed the conquered acres of Manchuria. The incident was over. Belatedly awaking to the peril of Japanese designs in Asia, the League of Nations sent Lord Lytton's commission to investigate on the spot the appeals of China for justice and redress. And even while the League Commission probed among the ruins, Japanese steam shovels were biting up the rich ores for the furnaces of Yahata and Nagoya. For in the arsenals of Nippon, in the smoke of steel mills studiously copied from the plants of Manchester and Pittsburgh, a new design for conquest was taking shape, a design which included, without reference to human scruple, all the horrors of scientific war, liquid fire, poison gas, and even the slow spreading harvest of death, of which the seeds are bacteria sowed from the air. For the next attack was to be far vaster in its scope, far richer in its yields. Manchuria was only a stepping stone, a gateway opening into the boundless breadth of China herself. China, motherland of the Orient, rich in foods and fats and the metals of the earth. Ranged across the 24 provinces of China proper, lay every raw material needed by a militant power determined to rule the East. Iron in Hubei, coal in Shanxi, oil in Quechao. And in the Japanese blueprint for empire, it was written, with China's resources at our disposal, we can proceed to conquer India, Central Asia, Asia Minor, and even Europe. This is the land of China. Its western frontiers, guarded by the rivers of the Pamirs, where the ancient silk trails ran, by the broiling wastes of the Gobi, cradle of the dinosaurs. This is China, with the barley fields of her northern provinces skirting the Russian steppes, with the rice paddies of her southern borders pierced by the waters of the Mekong on their journey to the jungles of Burma. This is the land where the camels grunt across the vast plateaus of the Asian heartland, and the coolies sweat on the dikes built along the Huanghe River by an emperor known as the Engineer 40 centuries ago. This is the land of eternal toil, where 400 million men and women, 1/5 of all mankind, know 15 cents a day as a living wage. And in China's millions, swarming like bees across the mud banks, seething in the streets of 100 huddled cities, Japan saw the forced labor for her dream of pro-prosperity. There was little to fear in the stone lions guarding the royal tombs of China. There was little to fear where men went hungry and unarmed, and the sight of death was common. In a land where the gods themselves were dead, there could surely be no will, no faith, no strength. The Japanese estimate for the total conquest of China. 3 months to found in steel and fire and blood the future prosperity of Greater Asia. From sea and air alike, they hurled the full weight of modern warfare against defenseless open cities. Canton, Kunming, Changsha, Shanghai, Peking, reduced to ashes overnight. 1,000 dead in a single hour. 200,000 in a week. Before the eyes of a staggered world, a miracle took place. Slowly, but with dreadful certainty, the ponderous bulk of China began to rise against the foe. From the rubble of their devastated homes, 50 million people crawled out along the roads and rails in the greatest mass migration of history. Even a journey of 1,000 miles, said Confucius, begins with a single step. They left behind them rape and loot and ruin. Instinctively, they moved westward toward the hills, for in the mountains of the hinterland lay their only hope: time. Time to arm, time to organize, time to unite. And even as the human river flowed back from the shattered coast, the people of China began to lay their own plan for the future greatness of Asia. Through city and hamlet, they searched the land for a man to lead them, a man who could weld their blind, passive resistance into an active, fighting faith. And in the land itself, they found their leader, a hard-bitten peasant soldier known as Chiang Kai-shek, disciple of Sun Yat-sen, father of the Chinese Republic. A new China must arise, Sun Yat-sen had said, a China built on the nation, on democracy, on the well-being of the people. And from the creed of Sun Yat-sen came China's inspiration: the nation first, the nation before all. In answer to the call of Chiang Kai-shek, peasant farmers tossed aside their mattocks, swarmed along the country roads to rally to the colors of the People's Army. In answer to his call, the ragged Red Spear Regiment of the Chinese Communists fell in beside the big sword soldiers of the hostile Guangxi Party, fell in beside the lanky Cantonese and the round-faced Manchus from the Northern Wall. Even in the mountains of the West, where the workers hewed their way into the clay and rock, the second law of the new China was heard. The nation's strength lies in democracy, but in democracy militant and activist. And out of reach of the ranging bombers, they buried 1,000 secret factories to supply the massing armies of their comrades. The catacombs where men and women smelted and forged, wove and finished $100 million worth of arms. Arms to turn the tide of invasion. Arms to raise China to greatness among great powers. Of the old faiths served as training grounds of the new. They had little time to practice the routines of army drill. Instead, they learned the split-second tempo essential to modern fighting units from the rhythm of their ancient shadow dances. But even as Japanese tanks clanked inland, even as Japanese batteries blasted the path of empire across the good earth, a deeper revolution was taking place behind the lines. The well-being of the people was the third and final law. The war has forced us to unite. The people's state will remain united. Even when the invader has been conquered, we must conquer poverty and ignorance and greed. The leaders of the new China were swift to turn words to deeds. Leaders like Sun Mailing, wife of Chiang Kai-shek, organizing the skill and strength of China's women citizens for the long fight for the future. Gate was opened for young China, a plan to build in every child the mind and muscle to fulfill the country's coming needs. For China swiftly realized that the only true wealth of nations lies in their citizens of tomorrow. The freedom of democracy, declared the People's Congress, is the freedom to serve the community. And in every training camp, the teachers wrote this lesson on the board. Even private soldiers must take their share of political responsibility. So the old coolie China died, and out of the torment of war, a great young nation arose. A nation with its eyes fixed upon the horizons of the future. A nation seeking the skill to produce and the habit to labor in the common good. December 7th, 1941, Japan strikes eastward, seeking in the rich islands of the Pacific the empire denied to her through 10 long years by the people's armies of China. Foreseeing through the smoke of Pearl Harbor the opening of fronts across the huge landmass of Asia, the high commands of the Pacific powers turned for advice to China's hard experience in grappling with the armies of Japan. Into Chongqing's airport came envoys to learn new lessons in continental warfare from the battle-wise spokesman of China. This is the story they heard. The story of a strange weapon which destroyed 1 million of Nippon's seasoned troops. Our plan of war, the Chinese said, was simple as the map itself. Space was our secret weapon. We traded space for time. We let the Japanese advance deep into the giant spaces of the interior. Suddenly, we blocked the spearheads of their advance. Then from the flanks, from the front, from the rear, from nowhere, we rose and struck them as we struck them at Taichung, a little city in the north of China. The enemy had broken through our center and captured Taichung. We had to fall back in the face of their overwhelming fire. Our headquarters were in the fields outside the city, and our commander there was General Sun, an attacker if ever there was one. But Sun knew how to wait. 2 whole weeks he waited, while his scouts watched every movement of the enemy. Watched until their troops began to leave the city. Then Sun baited his trap. Hidden regiments swept forward, climbed silently into the foxholes overlooking an unprotected valley along the Japanese line of march. Snipers in the folds of the hills set their sights on the empty road below. Straw hoods stripped from the muzzles of the guns. Range checked for the 100th time. Enemy in sight. Advance units of 60,000 Japanese. 0 hour is here. Stand by. Halt! Field of Payatung, the myth of Nippon the Invincible perished, along with 40,000 soldiers of the rising sun. Now, as Japan drives with renewed fury toward the heart of China, the eyes of the free world are fixed on the lifelines snaking across her western borders. For though the fighting in the blood-soaked fronts of China is fiercer than at any time before, she has sent down these twisting roads to friends as sore-pressed as herself, not only every weapon she could spare, but even her crack brigades with all their equipment and supplies. And today, the 400 million people of China, blasting new military highways through their ancient hills, carving out new airports to strike at Tokyo itself, are holding up before all the United Nations the very pattern of a modern fighting state, mobilized in total effort, total sacrifice. And as they enter yet another year of war, the young veterans of New China send this message to their comrades in arms across the seas. For us, the 10 years that are past are but the birth pangs of our newfound destiny. We do not ask for peace in our time. We seek only the high privilege of leading our people into their great future, the future which even now is rising from these bitter days. This alone is our understanding of militant democracy. On this alone is based the faith of fighting China.